Hello, welcome back to this week's episode of You Are My Boro, where I'm going to be playing second fiddle again to a star from BBC Tees. Last week it was Mark Drury. This week Rob Laws joining us on the show. And Rob was unfortunately at the Riverside on Tuesday night for Boro's Carabao Cup defeat to Doncaster. Boro 0, Doncaster 4, Rob. What did you make of it? I know we were expecting change teams and all that, and it's never a gimme in the first round of a cup. You never know what's to come, but I don't think anybody went expecting that, did they?
Firstly, can I come on here more often if you're going to call me a star? I think that's the first time I've ever been anybody's ever called me a star, but I'll take that absolutely. Yeah, I mean, when I saw the team sheet and I saw Doncaster Rovers of League One, who, look, they're flying under Grant McCann, started the season really well, 2 wins from 2. They have a lot of momentum and confidence about them at the minute. And I didn't think it was going to be an easy game. But when I saw the fact that they'd made 11 changes, I have to be honest, I did think it was going to be an easy game. And the fact that Middlesbrough made only 5 changes and on still some big names in there and still pretty strong squad for what they put out there. Still certainly a squad that was able, you would think, to beat Doncaster and put them to the sword, really. And they just didn't get going, did they? I mean, I was surprised at just how shaky they were at the back. They looked really, really nervous. Doncaster just were able to really cut through them in the midfield whenever they wanted, really. And I thought Doncaster's game plan worked down to a T, and Middlesbrough just didn't really seem to have the quality to break them down. And especially at the top end of the pitch, didn't really look like scoring. I think Rob Edwards said to us all after the game, didn't he? He said, we could have been there till Saturday and wouldn't have scored. I think that's a real concern. The fact that they looked toothless in attack and shaky at the back. And all of a sudden you're looking at that team and thinking, wow, what has happened here? How do you legislate for this performance, especially after Swansea, which I know wasn't the most gripping of games, but thought Boro did what they needed to do in that game in the first match under the new manager. Great seeing Dale Fry score, great hearing from him after the game. Boro scoring from set pieces, which has been a rarity over the years. And then all of a sudden Doncaster happens, and it just, I mean, I was speaking to a few fans on the way out of the ground, and everybody just that collective scratching of the heads thinking, well, it doesn't really get in much easier from here, does it? Millwall away, really difficult place to go. And everybody just thinking, everybody just a bit flat. And all that momentum that was built up from that performance or that result for Rob Edwards and the celebrations we saw from him afterwards. Yeah, just everybody questioning things a little bit and feeling just a bit flat.
There are kind of various strands, various strands from it to discuss, I think. But just one takeaway, I think, and it was from his interview with Mark Drury after, where he said the thing that most disappointed him was how heads dropped in the last 5 or 10 minutes, because attitude is something he has stressed again and again and again and again, isn't it? How many times have we heard him talking about, I want you to be brave, I want you to be bold. If you lose the ball, that's how you react. It's all about an approach to the game and an attitude to the game, isn't it? So you suspect, for all there were tactical elements that will have no doubt disappointed him, you suspect that was probably the message that he wanted to get across loud and clear to his players afterwards, more than anything else. Heads don't drop like they did in the last 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, and I thought he played it perfectly after the game. I think the one thing, and I think last time I was on here, we were talking exactly about this, Dom, and I think I said it then. So the one thing fans hate more than anything else from a manager is when a manager comes out after a game and says the game is different to the one that they've paid to watch. They can't stand it, and rightly so. Fans don't like to be taken for fools or be told that they don't know what they're talking about when they pay the hard-earned money to go and watch their team and support them week in, week out. And for that reason, I thought that Edwards played it perfectly, came out. I think he described it as pitiful at one point, didn't he? And like you said, heads dropped. That can't happen. Said it was a wake-up call. Said it was a reality check and all of those sorts of things. And I think he needed to do that. I think it was important that he came out and set that precedent. And I think Mark asked him as well. He said, have the players seen a different side of you in there after that? Because so far, we've seen Rob Edwards, the gentleman, haven't we? We've seen Rob Edwards being very polite and very romantic. But when he talks about Middlesbrough and when he talks about the level of support that this football club has and the weapons at his disposal from the training facilities, he's been very complimentary about Boro as a club as a whole. And this was the first time I think we saw him where, he's not going to accept a slip in standards. And probably for him as well, and we've heard various managers speak about it up and down the football pyramid, is that as a new manager, that first time, that first slip, that first error, that first defeat, it's about setting the marker and letting players know exactly where they stand and where you stand with level of performances like that. So really interesting post-match. And he said, we've learned lots of lessons, but I do think, and I got the impression, I don't know about you, when, you were there and listening to him as well, I got the impression he was really shocked by it. I think he thought the players had all of those things that he was describing previously: bravery, commitment. And I know he's spoken about leadership and how he's trying to foster a bit more of that in the squad. But I think he was really taken aback by the fact that the heads dropped. And I think out of all the things that happened on Tuesday night, that's probably perhaps one of the things he least expected.
Because for the team, he went strong. I mean, I know he made 5 changes, but it was still a strong team. Now, we'll get into squad depth and what comes next transfer-wise and what maybe Tuesday night told us. And certain selections were probably forced on him because he doesn't have too many options. But he also went strong because he wanted to win the game. He'd made that clear to us the day before in his press conference when he talked about the rich history of the competition on Teesside. But more importantly, the importance of momentum. And he said that his last message after training on Monday, the lads had been, momentum. We want to keep winning. We want to keep building. So he absolutely approached that game wanting to win. But I think just what you were saying there about his reaction to it and how the players might see a different side to him. It's funny because I was talking to someone at the club last week, and they were saying then that great and his communication is great and it has been great, but don't be fooled. He comes across as a real gentleman. He is a real gentleman. Callum Britton talked about him being a real good human being when he signed, but it said, someone had said, don't be fooled into thinking he absolutely doesn't have a steely side and a ruthless side when he needs to. And I think maybe that'll have been the first time the players saw that after Tuesday night game, because he was. And I think the other thing as well, just on his reaction and what he said and how strong he was, he'll also be very aware, won't he, that you, as a manager, and hopefully he won't have to, but you can't say those things again and again and again. You have to pick your battles, really, don't you? And he stressed to us that you can't just batter players, I think was how he put it when it said, how do you approach this now? And talked about the balance and we need to move forward. So you suspect that when they got into training Wednesday, his messaging was actually very different, right? Last night, bad night, we put it behind us, we learn from it, we move on. But he'll be well aware as well, won't he, that nights like that can't come along too frequently.
Yeah, and potentially, it was the banana skin, wasn't it? It was always going to be, given the fact that those things I mentioned earlier about Doncaster and where they are in their sort of revolution as a football club. I do think on paper, albeit 11 changes, which does is harder to account for, but I think it was that potential banana skin. And you're absolutely right about the steeliness. I mean, I came across Rob Edwards when he was at Forest Green Rovers and witnessed it. I mean, I was covering a game down there and the dugouts are really close to where the commentary position is. And all we'd heard about Rob Edwards up until that point was exactly as you described and as Callum Britton described. Great human being. The media down there loved him because, he called a spade, but was never abrasive and always very accommodating with his time. But then during the game, the one thing that sticks out is him absolutely not just living and breathing every kick and not just doing it for the cameras and for the crowd, but the real driving of standards. And if things weren't up to standards, he's straight on to his players and getting that message across. And, I think what Boro have seen maybe previously in the dugout more recently is the dugouts have been a little bit more passive. I think is fair to suggest. It certainly hasn't had that level of that level of energy that you see from Rob Edwards on the dugout. So yeah, I think his reaction, I think, was right. I also think it's right that you can't go on and batter players constantly, and fans will be staying there screaming there going, why not? If I have a rubbish day at work and my boss comes and he tells me, and you're absolutely right. And but the two things aren't necessarily the same. And if you're at work and getting battered every day, you're probably not going to go in with a spring in your step, and you're probably not going to go in and give it your all, and you're certainly not going to necessarily buy into what the manager is trying to give you. I do think Saturday is going to be a big game because, as with all new managers, results dictate things, don't they? I think I remember it was going off on a slight tangent here now, but Ralph Hasenhüttl, when he was at Southampton, and he spoke about as an interview with him, and he was saying, as a new manager, you live and die by your first training session. A lot of players will often make their mind up on you straight off your first training session, and your first handful of games.
Right.
And if those games go well and the results go well, then all of a sudden everything you believe, everything you're selling as a manager, they buy, and they're locked in. And okay, well, we can see it because it's working. It's when it doesn't work early on, and he was talking about how difficult that is then to shift. And I think that's a really interesting concept. And I think, it may be something that Rob Edwards has to wrestle with. Hopefully not. And hopefully they'll go down to Millwall and get the response that he wants. I certainly don't think it'll be for the lack of trying. And it's going to be a fascinating game at the Den on Saturday.
It was a reminder Tuesday night, I think, wasn't it? Of the need for patience, really, of the fact that Saturday was good. There were so many positives to take from Saturday. You're touching it there: the set piece, the game management, the clean sheet, the fact that the bond, unity between the fans and the players and the management at full time, real feeling of goodwill going away from the Riverside. Tuesday was maybe a reminder that this can't be an overnight success. Nobody can expect Edwards to be an overnight success. There has to be a time, and there has to be an understanding that Edwards needs support, and he needs time, and he needs patience.
Yeah, 100%. And I think a lot of people would completely echo that. And I really do hope he gets that. Now, you look at, in terms of that patience and that time, it's difficult because he'll only get so much time and so much patience if results don't continue. And look, we're going off one game, we're going off one bad night, aren't we? And that's the thing. It's still very raw for a lot of people, and that's why emotions and people will be voicing their opinions quite strongly, I suggest. But in terms of him going forward, I think, yes, he needs patience. Yes, he needs time. He's asking the team to play in a different way to what they have previously. He's also asking the team to do it without necessarily right now all the components that he would need to play in the way that he wants to play. And like I say, I've seen his formation at various other clubs, whether it be Luton, whether it be Forest Green, when he has the right components, and it's really impressive, really impressive. I don't doubt that he'll get it right. It's just if he gets the tools and if he gets the time, and I would hope that he does. But I don't know about you as well. I've sensed the subtle hints from him, and I know some fans have picked up on this as well. Whenever there's a passing comment to him, whether it be like, oh yeah, let's go for the playoffs, or oh, come on, Rob, yeah, we're really excited about this season. And he's always said, his reaction every single time, and I've clocked this on about 4 or 5 different occasions, every time he says, one step at a time.
Yeah.
One step at a time. And I think that is him trying to subtly just remind people that we need to run before we can walk here.
Manage expectations.
Exactly. Manage expectations. There's been a lot of change over the summer on and off the pitch. There's probably yet to be still more change to come. And like I say, he needs all the components till we see what a real Rob Edwards side is going to be. And that's probably happening slower than he would like at this stage. It's probably happening slower than Boro fans would like at this stage. But it is, unfortunately, that P word that fans don't like, a process, and the other P word that fans don't like, patience.
And you talked, I think it links to this. You were chatting to a Doncaster analyst after the game on Tuesday night, and what he was saying really tallies with everything we've talked about there.
Yeah, and it was just after the game. So the back of the West Stand, as he was packing up all the kit, and went across and just having a bit of a chat on. Often do that with opposition sort of media or analysts, and he said, look, and he pointed to the field and he went, "That's 2.5 years' work, that." And he says, "We've been working at this 2.5 years under Grant McCann." And he said, people think now, obviously because of their promotion last season into League One, people think this is an overnight thing. He says, we've been working on that squad, players who have been there from the minute he walked in the door, but also shipping players out who didn't suit the way that he wanted to work, and bringing in players who do suit that system. And he said, people, and he caught me straight. Honestly, he read me like a book, because he went, people have seen that lineup tonight and thought, we don't care about this competition. And I was reporting for 5 Live on Tuesday night, and I think my opening gambit on my preview was, I think we can all assume that Doncaster Rovers are focusing on League One this season, given the fact they've made 11 changes. And I admitted to him, I says, "Oh yeah, you've got me there," because I said the exact same. And he says, "Yeah, but he said, those 11 changes are down to the fact that we've built up this squad to make sure that we have cover, and quality cover, not just cover for the sake of it, quality cover in every aspect of this team, and making sure that if one player comes out, the system doesn't necessarily change. The game plan might, but the system and the way we want to play doesn't change massively, and we can almost a like-for-like replacement. Billy Sharp up front, Luke Molyneux came off the bench, one of the standout performers, albeit only a very cameo role on Tuesday night, but they benched a lot of their big players and still put in a performance. I think for Doncaster, that shows the work that they've put in. It shows the amount of time that it can take. And I had been at Doncaster, it was the season Grant McCann came in League Two. So it was just before he came in. And they were playing Wrexham. No, sorry, I beg your pardon. It was before that. And I walked into that stadium and it was a morgue. It was toxic. The crowds were really low, and it just felt, you could feel it. And you'll know, and fans listening to this will know, we've all been in grounds where you can feel that, how managers talk about the shirt being heavy, and the atmosphere being heavy, and it felt like that. And it's taken him 2.5 years to turn that completely on its head now. And I was back there last season covering a game, and it was like night and day. But that has taken time, and it has needed patience, and it's needed an awful lot of restructuring, both in his backroom staff, which we were talking about, and both, most definitely, where it matters the most, on a Saturday at 3:00 on the pitch. So yeah, I do think that ties in. And obviously with Boro, there is more pressure on that job than there is on a Doncaster Rovers job. That goes without saying. But he is going to need that patience. He is going to need that time. And he is going to need that backing as well. And we've already seen new signings coming through the door just this week, with Rav van den Berg going out as well, of course. And hopefully that departure of Rav van den Berg, albeit Hansen coming in, just frees up a little bit more for them to do some more business. Because the other thing that was evident on Tuesday night was that lack of depth, and was that lack of quality, or that something else. When plan A isn't working, and I know managers hate when people like us talk about plan Bs, but when plan A isn't working, what else do you have? And Boro on Tuesday night didn't really have that something else.
No, and I think what Edwards is working towards is making sure he does have that something else.
Yes,
because
agreed.
He has talked on the record, hasn't he, about the players we want to bring in. We want them to be versatile. We want them to be able to fit one or more systems. So Sontje Hansen, who arrives on Wednesday, is a perfect example. He is as comfortable playing on either flank as he is as a number 10. So clearly, I don't think he'll go straight into the team on Saturday. But when he plays at the minute, if the system as it is now, he's going to play as the 110, one of the 10s where Berg, and Whittaker have been playing. But if Edwards then decides to change to a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1, he can seamlessly adapt and seamlessly shift into one of the wide attacking roles. Callum Britton can play as a right back or a right wing back. You would expect that the left back who arrives can play as a left back or a left wing back. And I think what was telling after the game on Tuesday was the obvious takeaway was this highlights the lack of depth. This indicates that in certain areas of the squad, Boro just haven't got the quality and haven't got the depth, and that needs addressing. And we spoke to Edwards about that, and not 1 ounce of him moved to disagree with that. He basically said, "Yeah, we know that, and we're working towards it, and we will address that." And I think it just taps into this what Edwards has been like over the course of the last few weeks. Really, there is clearly a confidence, a reassurance that transfers will happen, that they are going to get the players. He said last week, "We will sign more players." It was on Tuesday night, actually. "We will sign more players." He said very similar last week. Clearly, there are areas that need strengthening, but I think Sontje Hansen, like Callum Britton, is another example, really, of the Hansen stuff's gone on all summer, hasn't it? Boro have wanted him all summer. It's rumbled on throughout the summer. Boro have had to be patient. They'll continue to be patient to get the players they want. Even after Tuesday night, there was no panic from Edwards in terms of the squad, the making of the squad, the need for signings, was there?
No, and I think that's bang on. I think he is fully confident, and I do believe that he is. I don't think this is a shock to him, and I mean that in the sense of like, I don't think this summer has been a shock to him. I don't get the sense that this is anything that he wasn't expecting. So I think there is that to it as well, that he is well versed in these sorts of things at varying degrees, at varying levels. And I do think, like I said earlier, when he gets the people in the positions that he needs, and when he gets the players that will fit how he wants to play, and when he gets that depth, I do think it will see a true Rob Edwards side in a positive. I mean that in a positive way, and I really like the appointment of Rob Edwards. I know it did divide opinion, and some fans weren't as convinced, but having seen him at Forest Green, at Luton, I can see why Boro have gone for him, and I can see why it will work. I just think there's still square pegs in round holes there in that squad a little bit, and I still think, as we've touched upon, the depth is going to be a real issue, because as we know, Middlesbrough have their injury issues, don't they? And they will have, as will a lot of Championship clubs this season. And it's the idea that if Tuesday night is the evidence that we go off, and albeit it's small sample size, 2 games into the season, then it's only going to take 1 or 2 injuries to really disrupt that starting 11. And then you start looking at how that impacts the team and the performances going forward. And that's what clearly he wants to address and is trying to address. So I think it will come good. I do just think, again, that patience is going to be important.
Rav van den Berg, then, he's signed for FC Cologne on Wednesday, 30 million euros in total, 5-year deal. How will Van den Berg be remembered at Boro?
Yeah, good question. I think I remember when he first came through the door, and the impression I got is that he was here for a good time and not a long time. I think it was always,
he made that absolutely clear, didn't he?
Yeah, it was that sort of thing of like, this is the next step on my journey, and Boro did very well to get him. There was a lot of clubs linked with him. Teams much higher up football pyramids, his teams in Serie A looking at him amongst others. And he decided to come to Boro and said that Boro was the right step. He knew he was going to come, he was going to play, he was going to get experience. He liked the manager who was here at the time and what he felt that he could offer to his game. I do think there was still more to come from him. I still think we didn't quite see. We only saw the best of him in fits and spurts. I personally believe. I think So, albeit some fans will be disappointed, I don't think he's irreplaceable. And with Alfie Jones coming in, who is pretty much, he's like for like replacement, isn't it? That's been sort of made clear. I think they've got somebody who is made for the Championship. And I know you for the Northern Echo, Dom, you spoke to somebody from the Hull side of things. We did a similar thing on BBC Radio T Sport, and they were saying about Alfie Jones, he is a 7, 8 out of 10 almost every week. And he's the player that when he's not in the team, you notice he's not there. And I think that will be a really good addition and quite a shrewd bit of business from Boro. And one of my wife's friends' husbands, tenuous link, is my auntie's sister's dog. No, it's is a diehard Hull City fan, and he was telling me everything about him and how great he is, and how he's a huge miss, and Hull Boro's gain is Hull's loss, etc. So I think, given the fact that Middlesbrough are now clearly operating in this model that we've seen other Championship clubs operate in for quite some time now, which is you buy talent young, whether it be from Europe, whether it be from other clubs' academies, with the intention that you then sell high, you make your money back that way, and you're not as dependent on one man, i.e. Steve Gibson, constantly putting his hand in his pocket, and you try and make the club a little bit more self-sufficient in that way. Boro are clearly operating that way now, and that's been evident for some time. And given that, I think they did well to hold out for the price that they wanted, a full package deal of just over £11 million. They were offered much lower than that initially, turned it down, stood their ground. I think that was the right stance. Everybody has their price, and the price is always that of the selling club. And they got a good return on him. And now, hopefully, that money can continue to be invested in the squad going forward. And I think that is, you talk about patience earlier with Rob Edwards. I think that is just the new reality that maybe Boro fans aren't quite used to, and are going to sort of having to get used to more often. Now in this sort of regime under Kieran Scott and others, that there is maybe going to be a slightly higher turnover of players, with young ones coming in and then selling them on when the right offer comes in. But the key thing being that it's when the right offer comes in, not when just any offer comes in. And so with Rav van den Berg, I think good, solid defender who showed promise at times, still had more to show, I would say, and ultimately wasn't irreplaceable. As good as he was on his day, and I do think he was a top defender on his day, and at times last season and the season before, one of Boro's best defenders.
Yeah, there's such a thing as being good sellers, isn't there?
Brighton, exactly.
Good sellers. Brentford, maybe not so much a bad example, but in the past, yes, they've been good sellers. And I think the other thing, we were talking about this on the show last night with Ado and Mark, for Boro to sign these certain types of players, they have to make it clear that they'll sell them. They have to, you can't sell a vision of, and I know this, it's hard to say because clearly we all want to see Boro back in the Premier League, but the reality is you can't sell a vision of helping someone progress to the next step, having a pathway to the Premier League, and then when these players get the opportunity to move to the Premier League, refuse to sell them. Now that doesn't mean the first offer that comes in, you roll out the red carpet or drive them up or drive them to the next club. But clearly, I think the case of Morgan Rogers, Rav van den Berg, when it's knowing when to sell, it's knowing what a good deal is, and as you were saying there about Boro standing the ground, I think where they deserve credit for that is Van den Berg made it absolutely clear this summer he wanted to go. Early in the summer, he made it clear this was the window in which he wanted to leave, and yet. Even against that backdrop, even with Edwards saying on Saturday he didn't feel it was right to include Van den Berg in the first game, they still stood the ground and got the valuation or something like the valuation for him. And then finally, I think the only other thing to point out is there's a sell-on clause in there for Boro, and Van den Berg will see Cologne as another stepping stone, won't he? He said
that in his. I was reading the quotes this morning, but he said that in his very first interview. It's similar to what he said at Middlesbrough. He says, "I saw this as the perfect next step in my career." And so credit to Boro again for putting that selling clause in. And just one thing to add in, and sorry to interrupt, is the fact that, as much as I totally agree, and we all want players to come to our club and feel like they want to be there for the reason that we would all want to be there and the reason that we would all want to wear the shirt. And the reality of it is, a lot of the times that's not just the case. It's just not the case. And fans see clubs and see themselves where they want to see themselves, and they might see a pathway to that, and Middlesbrough might be a stepping stone on that way. Not to say that for some players it won't be the destination like it is for some, but it's not going to be like that for everyone. And in making sure, as you say, Boro sell for the right price, and almost they lay that out there as part of their pitch to players, that we'll give you a good platform, and then when the right offer comes in, if it's from a higher division, we won't stand in your way. I think that in itself, and evidence of that, is further it's further proof for players when Boro are talking to them. So Boro can now use, when they are looking at young talent like Hansen or like other players, they can use the likes of a Morgan Rogers, they can use the likes of Ram van den Berg, and of course others, and say, well, look, here's the proof. This is what we've done, and this is how we've helped players. And they've gone on to have these moves and these moves, and we have not stood in their way. And we're giving you this. We're giving you this promise that we won't stand in your way if the right offer comes from a league above, for example. And I think that in itself can really be the strength, not just saying it, but having the proof of doing it in the past as well. And Middlesbrough have shown that more recently than many.
Injury-wise for the weekend, Finnazar's in contention to be back in the squad. We'll get an update from Edwards on that, and from the first week or two, I can say with confidence we will get an injury update from the head coach on that, which is refreshing.
Hey, this brave new world in which we live in. Yeah.
So yeah, we'll get a pressers Friday. You've probably seen press conferences a Friday afternoon this season, so we'll get an update on that Friday afternoon. But none of the other injured players are expected to be back, which makes you think, well, I'd be surprised if it wasn't the team that started the first game last week, which means Dale Fry, Alfie Jones, and Luke Ayling will have a wrestle with Josh Coburn at the Den on Saturday. You touched on it earlier, Rob. It's a tough game, isn't it? Millwall are going to be right there this season.
Yeah, and I think they are. I think they are going to be up there, and I know everybody now is no doubt putting it all down to the fact that it is Josh Coburn. It always comes back to it, doesn't it? Who's the ex-Boro player? Right, well, nailed on. We all think he's going to score.
It was Macaulay Langstaff. It was fellow Teesside Macaulay Langstaff who scored the winner at Norwich last week.
I know, yeah, exactly.
That'd be a twist if it was him that scored the first goal. And not
well, imagine. But yeah, so I think, it's going to be a tough game, and that old cliche that is a cliche now, but it is always a difficult place to go, Millwall. It's going to be a challenge. I wouldn't be necessarily mad if it is the same side that played against Swansea. Certainly there was a lot of positives to come from that game. Defended well when they had to, capitalized on the opportunity that they had with the set piece. Also, just putting this out there, and I know Rob Edwards has said that he's going to share the captaincy around. Give it a Dale Fry. I mean, for my money, just off his interview after the game. And I mean, I was listening. I was driving back from Yeovil on that Saturday, and I was listening to the last hour of BBC Radio T Sport and listening to the opinions of Maddo and the interviews and whatnot. And it was, I was smiling to myself in the car, because it was in the space of 3.5 minute interview, Dale Fry convinced everybody that he all of a sudden was captain material. And don't get me wrong, I was there with him. I was just like, what a brilliant interview. I love that. Somebody who clearly adores the club. And we were speaking earlier about, where people see themselves. Dale Fry, born in the town, no family, all Boro mad. He's Boro mad, and now captaining his boyhood club, and how much it meant to him, and the way in which, in typical Boro fashion, he explained that, I just thought was brilliant. And yeah, I just think all power to the Dale Fry for captain society, because I'm right there with the rest of them. So I hope he gets the armband on Saturday and keeps hold of it for a few games at least.
And just finally on Millwall, the thing is, for all Tuesday was disappointing, and clearly it was. There's no getting away from that. If you get any sort of result, to draw, but obviously a win, you get any sort of result on Saturday, then that's soon forgotten. And 4 points out of 6, 6 points out of 6 is a great start to the championship season. It flips like that, doesn't it? And clearly that will have been Edwards' message when they got in yesterday morning.
Oh, without a doubt. And I suspect, when we were talking earlier about the seeing that other side of Rob Edwards, I think he'll be demanding that on Saturday. And I'm sure that he's explained that in as many or as little words as well, that he is expecting, and Boro fans expecting, a response from Tuesday night. And it might not be a bad thing in the grand scheme of things. And don't get me wrong, it was bad. It was an embarrassing night. There was a lot of things wrong with that performance on Tuesday night. But it might just be the reality check and the kick up the backside that the team needed, or at least like the situation needed. And if any players or if anybody in the club were getting sort of carried away after the win over Swansea and thinking, oh, great, here we go, we're off and running. This is, it's going to be a breeze. And I don't think anybody was thinking that. But that reset on Tuesday night just makes it apparent. And I think that's what I would fancy. I fancy Boro to pick something up at Millwall, albeit I think it will be tough, and they will have to defend well, and they'll be under pressure at times. But I just think that, given how in pre-season as well, and I know you can only take so much from pre-season, they were taking their chances from set pieces. They look way more dangerous in and around the box in that regard now. I would back Boro to come away with at least a point at Millwall. But I do think there'll be a reaction, because I think Rob Edwards will demand that.
He is hoping. Well, thanks so much for that, Rob. Really appreciate it. Thanks to you for watching and listening. And we'll be back next week with our next episode of You Are My Boro. Take care.